And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Recording. My guest this evening is Mr. Lacille de Silva, who's a well-known activist, is a budding politician. He's served the country in several roles, including a long stint as in the administration division of Sri Lanka's parliament. He also was the Secretary General of Presifac, the ill-fated attempt to find out about large-scale corruption. But very good evening to you, Lacille, and welcome to Newsline Live. Newsline Recording, sorry.
Very good evening to you too, Faraz. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, but I'm deeply disturbed. Now that we have the IMF in the bag, so to speak, I unfortunately haven't noticed much of a change impacting the ordinary people of our country. I went into the supermarket the other day. There was a kalabala, for want of a better word, on eggs. I read the Sunday papers and I read with horror what was done in the procurement of medicine supplies.
Right.
And we will discuss that, I'm sure. And then, of course, you wonder what this has all done to the food supply chain, which all means that the ordinary the ordinary people out there are impacted negatively. Not to mention the school children who are fainting sometimes in school. There is a real challenge in terms of food for the children. And of course, school books have gone up and in price. Lacille de Silva, tell me, please, what's going on? What should this government be doing? Do they not care for the people?
Thank you so much, Faraz. You know, I mean, they are very happy that they have got, say, nearly $3 billion, and that again is a loan. All what we have been doing in the past several decades, we have been borrowing because we have not gone into, our economy, and then we have not thought of producing whatever possible here in this country. All what we did mostly, even what could have been, grown here, all that was imported. Actually, ours is a country, about 80% of the revenue is all on basic needs of the people, which is totally not the right thing to do. There could have been better options, and they could have definitely thought of, industrialization, all that what they had to a great extent. Some of those things were sold, and they were sold for a pittance, I would say. In the meantime, they even now plan all that for various purposes, thinking in terms of selling what we have. Even the president says, if you don't have money, what have you got to do? You have to sell all your things. No, it is not the case, right? As you very well stated, because we are facing such a lot of problems in this country. Leave aside food, education, all that. Go to the villages, the agriculture sector, the farmers are, in danger in so many ways. The wild elephant, so much of problems. Health sector is completely collapsed. Even the medical officers, they are grumbling that all required medicines. I was in Cargill's today, buying certain things, and there was a old gentleman, he was screaming that the medicines were not there. And even to buy those medicines, if you have the money, if the medicines are not available, what a shame, Sri Lanka, because ours was the country in 1948. Though they say we were just $1 below Japan and we were second to Japan only, I would say we were almost at the top, because our country was far superior in every respect, the living standards, education, all that, right? At that time, I would say in Japan, they were starving like what we are doing now 74 years later. They had unemployment.
What did Japan do then, which maybe we can emulate now?
Yeah, because, if I remember right, it was President Roosevelt. What he did was, having ended the war, there was General Douglas MacArthur. General Douglas MacArthur was assigned a special responsibility, and he was asked to ensure three things basically. But the three things: One was to ensure that the king should not be given power so that he will not be able to declare war. He should be made the head of state. And the second thing was to make a democratic country similar to ours, similar to UK and similar to Canada, Australia, where, elected representatives will eventually govern the country. And the third thing was to ensure that a democratic nation is built with economic achievement, growth. So naturally, within a very short period, they were able to achieve all that thanks to everybody, even the Japanese, eventually the leaders, they were committed to it. Ultimately, they were able to take the country forward. Now, the sad part in our case is, if we had the visionary leaders, because that was in 1948, when in 1959, when Lee Kuan Yew came here, he had boasted of our civil, actually governance model. And he had even said, that was basically after Bandaranaike's election, SWRD Bandaranaike, because he had also by then, if I remember right, it was in 56 itself or 57, enacted a law, say bribery and corruption, and that department was established, and 5 members of parliament were sort of ultimately found, they were dealt with, their civic rights were removed. So that was the country, and he thought our country was working so very well, and he wanted to create Ceylon then, in Singapore, and he did that. Where are we back again? We are back again at the bottom, and everybody should.
With all due respect, Lacille, we've heard this story a million times, and maybe a trillion times, several times much bigger than the size of our GDP. Where they're comparing us to, and politicians try to live, on this reflected sort of glory of the past, on what Mr. Lee Kuan Yew said. But what they're not talking about is that Sri Lanka, Ceylon, did not achieve what Lee Kuan Yew thought was happening over here. What do you think that this government must do straight away? What are the sectors of the economy, for example, that the government must immediately take a look at and fast track towards greater development in the cause of finding dollars? Because apparently that is what we are lacking the most.
I had a nice book I was reading where I don't know, because it says, it would have been very nice if I was able to quote it. Now, the business leaders in India, they say, you don't need dollars, you only need the vision, the ability, the thinking, capacity, all that, right? That is what Indians ultimately did. Unfortunately, we are crying for dollars because we don't have the intelligent kind of parliamentarians, let me say it that way, right? Who can plan, who can sort of, get down even investors.
But with all due respect again, our parliamentarians are pretty good at planning their own finances. I'm not suggesting that they're corrupt at all. Oh, no. All I'm saying is that their planning is pretty darn good, because lots of them are far wealthier now than they were before.
I would say because ours now is really a kleptocracy. It's not a democracy, I would say it that way, right? Because now, having broken down the state structure completely, actually it's governed by a set of, I would say there's another word, autocrats, and what it is, it's a kakistocracy, ruled by some people who really don't know how to govern. That's one problem, basically.
For a moment, I thought you were struggling to find a word that sort of rhymes with morons. I mean, come on.
Yeah. You're right. Something like that, and that didn't come to my mind at once, basically. So that's old age, I suppose. Now, in the same breath, I would say it this way, like what you said. They have been so very clever to look after themselves so very well. Ours is a problem because the politicians have become rich. The country has become poorer. So what is this problem, basically? This is basically, as we said, as we just mentioned, it's a kleptocratic system here in this country. And that is the basic reason why you asked me about, the issues such as food, say medicines, education, all that. Eventually.
Yes. Now, Mr. De Silva, you mentioned earlier, and in our introduction, we said that you were the secretary of the Presifac, the committee or the commission appointed by President Sirisena to look into high-level corruption. In that context, what do you have to say about these astonishing events that are unfolding in terms of the procurement of medicine? After all, is there nothing sacred? People are ill, they are suffering, and government members have been doing nonsense, really. What do you say?
It's a very good question. It's a very good thing. Let me just open up my laptop. There was a letter I was going through. Basic issue right now is we should be grateful to the Supreme Court, because our salvation is only in the judiciary, because these particular politicians who are in parliament don't understand what a democracy is, how a democratic country needs to be governed. Basically, even the president himself seems to be thinking that he can enact laws what he wants, the way he wants. No, he can't. He can't, because Constitution specifically says how the laws should be enacted. Now, go back to the same question what you asked me. Now, with regard to the current problem, now Parliament, I would say, is totally responsible, because whatever said and done in the current situation, the medical supplies, all that is utterly corrupt. Now, I want to read this. Now, TSL, that is Transparency International, files FR case against purchasing medical supplies from India through credit line. Even on credit line, it appears to be they are robbing. This must stop. Now here, the case is filed in public interest and challenges the following. The role of the cabinet of ministers in procuring medical supplies through unregistered private suppliers. Unregistered private suppliers in a government, you just can't do that. It's totally irregular and a punishable offense.
And punishable to whom? Who will get punished?
No, whoever who is involved, because the role of the cabinet.
The minister be punished?
Yeah, even the ministers, even the president, because cabinet, now president can't be dealt with because he has immunity at this moment since he is the president, which needs to be amended, because that was consolidation of so much of power with the presidency. That is one of the problems in this country, I would say it that way. So the next problem is the role of the NMRA in providing waiver of registration to procure medical supplies from unregistered suppliers. There has been a big problem. They had spent such a lot of money for this registration of, what is National Medical Registration, Authority or whatever. Yeah, and the computer system, apparently having spent so much of money, I believe at the moment it is not functioning in that way. So they have apparently given a waiver, but that is not the way how to do that. Non-compliance with procurement guidelines, including the emergency procurement process. Emergency procurement process, all that. Now, let me go back to the 19th Amendment, right? 19th Amendment.
Shall we come back to the 19th Amendment after this little break?
All right.
Thank you. And that is Newsline recording in a halfway mark. We're now going to take a peek at this evening's headline news from that wonderful primetime News First team. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline recording. My guest this evening is Mr. Lacille de Silva. Mr. De Silva, you were just talking about the 19th Amendment. What has that got to do with the situation we are in now?
I was trying to explain, because 19th Amendment was a dream our Sri Lankans had for so many decades after the enactment of the 78 Constitution, because they said it was highly politicized and it became utterly corrupt. So they wanted the creation of these so-called independent authorities and commissions, all that, right? Now, having created all that, also they created the procurement commission, which was definitely necessary move and a good idea. But what happened? Even in the Yahapal regime under the present president as the prime minister, then actually the procurement commission was maintained, and office bearers were there, office holders were there. They were paid, they were given all the perks, benefits, cars, all that, right? But no particular assignment was given to them. So naturally, they went ahead having totally ignored the procurement committee. Now, in the 20th Amendment, what they did was actually, they took one step, and 20th Amendment, they abolished the procurement commission, right? Now, the 21st Amendment, it has got the commission in place. But with the commission in place, I don't know, they should not allow this kind of things where they permit, purchasers of this nature, particularly medicines, various huge purchases, maybe coal, maybe our fuel requirements, all that. It has to be channeled. It has to be said through the usual process of procurement procedure.
But this is callousness at its best.
I think, they're callous at the same time, so corrupt. They have broken down the entire system. How can they do that? Because this is a country where they have sent there to do a few things. They have to protect our rights, human rights. They have to strengthen the democracy. And at the same time, they have to look after these institutions, maybe rule of law, all that. At the same time, maintain all these institutions and give the required service in that way with transparency, all that. The biggest problem that we have right now, though there are all these institutions in place, the institutions have been totally neglected or destabilized, or at least completely, now. There's another thing that I like to raise it here. It's something like that. Now, see, the Human Rights Commission, right? I saw apparently this is not relevant, but the biggest problem, I need to be within the limits here. Now see, officers are not allowed to do their job. They're not allowed to do their job conscientiously, honestly, right? They want.
Why is that? Who precludes them from doing that?
I believe the entire cabinet is also responsible, total parliament is also responsible, because, now see, even when they were examined in the COPE and all that, right? We should thank Charita Herath, because Charita Herath wrote a letter. Charita Herath raised this issue that nothing happens for reports tabled in parliament. That was a good turning point if they had taken it up seriously. Unfortunately, even at this stage, they have not done anything meaningful. So that is the problem with the parliament as well, because though they have the function of, oversight function, nothing virtually happens. How can NMRA or even the cabinet for that matter, they may do this kind of thing? We should be grateful to the Supreme Court, because Supreme Court has taken the decision to suspend all those. Now, here I must say, Gregory Brennan, Chief Justice of Australia, had said the duty of the judiciary is to look after the people, and our Supreme Court is doing just that, and very well.
The sad part is that these people do these wrong things. The Supreme Court the rules against them and so on, and in favor of the people, in favor of what is right. But none of these jokers end up in jail. South Korea had four presidents who went to jail.
Let me turn it this way. I would blame not the Supreme Court or the judiciary. It is the fault of the Attorney General.
I'm not blaming the Supreme Court. What I'm saying is the Supreme Court, in a way, clears up the mess at the end of the pipe. But in the meantime, none of these jokers end up in jail, and they're not held accountable.
You're 100% sure. Look at this, right? I have to be very cautious about saying this. Now, there was a man who was caught basically accepting, something like a commission or a bribe or what it is, kappan. How do
Yeah. Well, okay, let's call it a bribe.
Yeah, right.
Nothing like the truth.
And there was a suspended term, and he's in parliament, a cabinet minister. So,
well, there you go. It's almost the precise opposite of what's happened in South Korea.
And even UK now, see, now there are so many instances, even in Japan, even in Australia, right?
Yeah.
Why can't we punish our rogue parliamentarians? Because the law specifically says 12.1. Let me quote that. 12.1 says law is equal to everybody. All persons are equal before the law and are entitled to the equal treatment, protection of the law.
That's the law, but the implementation is fraught with danger and frustration.
No, but for that matter, the Attorney General has a responsibility to ensure rule of law. I would put the blame on the Attorney General because he comes out with various excuses. Now, with regard to say Lacille Veeratunga, even Anusha Palpit and all that, So we got to be confident that we have to. I would say this way also. Is it due to state capture? Because politicians have taken over completely of the entire process, right? Now, this has to be dismantled.
Would you also agree that this whole system has become possible because the civil service and the police, all government appointments have become politicized?
You're right.
Politicization.
You're right. Now, one thing, the biggest problem in the public sector, in 1978, I have been telling everywhere, maybe like what you said, billion times or trillion times or whatever. So this is the problem. Article 52.1 specifically says the president shall appoint the secretaries,
Yeah.
So this is something which is a very serious problem. Now, after Article 52.1, there shall be a secretary for every ministry of a minister or the cabinet of ministers who shall be appointed by the president. 2, the secretary to a ministry shall, subject to the direction and control of his minister, exercise supervision over the departments of government and other institutions in charge of the minister. So the president appoints the minister, secretary, and secretary gets orders from the minister. Actually, secretary's backbone is completely broken over to this factor. So naturally all these have to be removed in future. Unless you do that, you will not be able to expect what you said, because everything, whatever said and done, in the hands of the politicians completely.
So in this whole context and in this ambience of where the government is clearly refusing to have elections because they know how unpopular they are, what should the public do? How should they be preparing how to choose a local representative that will represent their better interests?
There is another thing, right? Now see, Directive Principles of State Policy and Fundamental Duties, Article 27, Chapter 6. It specifically says they can't, right? They will have to do everything. Now, the Directive Principles of State Policy herein contained shall guide Parliament, the President and the Cabinet of Ministers in the enactment of laws and governance of Sri Lanka for the establishment of a just and free society. There are a lot more. I can't read all that. Actually, this, they say, in India, these things have to be taken into consideration when they enact laws, when they run governance. There are special directives given by the Supreme Court as well. So I think even in our case, because there is shelter they take that these matters cannot be litigated. So under that cover they get the protection. No, you have to adopt these principles. You have to respect these guidelines, and you have to observe those guidelines, because this is for the purpose of creating a just and free society. So we are not being treated in that way. Our rights have been removed, taken away. And someday, even after a change of government, because we remember in 1978, Mrs. Bandaranaike's civic rights was removed, having enacted a special law, a new law, retroactively. So, you know, there are situations even here in Sri Lanka, I think we might be able to do all that, because that is the most important thing. They have to uphold all this, and the parliament is not doing all that, because now today, Sanath Nishanta said, right, the best thing, they support president because he has been able to, you know, punish those. He used a particular word, Rastyadukare, the, you know, hooligans. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So naturally, that is not the way how he should treat the people who have really, you know, elected them ultimately. So this is a big problem. There are people who don't understand what their responsibilities are. This is the biggest problem, you know. So
would you say then that is Sri Lanka not ready for robust democratic ideals? Is it that the people, by and large, do not understand what are their rights?
No, basically, you know, it was the same situation when people like CWW, Khandankara, DSA, and NAC, all of them, they were elected in 1931. They were able to build up a strong, you know, budding, I mean, developing country, a good democratic state. But they have reversed all that. So naturally, we will have to restart now. See, even Lee Kuan Yew, like what we discussed at the very beginning, basically, actually they were people who did their job, who did all that in order to develop the country. So naturally, these people are, I'm sure they are not going to do that. It might be even better to have a new group of people who are committed, genuinely interested in so, and also people who will not abuse or who will not misuse government funds. You know, now see, this is a case where in Sri Lanka, we have two problems, as you know, the World Bank has repeated that deficit, what is it, dual sort of twin deficit. They say the budget, there was a huge gap, and then the foreign currency account, right? Our imports were more than the exports. So naturally, we need a government who will concentrate on all that. And I think it is possible without any fear, because I feel the people have, to a great extent now, I mean, I'm happy for us, whatever said and done. It's people now understand that these people will not do that. So naturally, there's a possibility, you know, I think we might be able to see a change probably.
Indeed. It appears then from what you say that the laws of natural justice will do Sri Lanka proud eventually. Lacille de Silva, thank you very much for being on Newsline Recording, and we much appreciate your time. It's now time for the 9 o'clock primetime news from that wonderful primetime news team. And not before, of course, I say have a great evening as much as you can. And of course, God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Faraz. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.